Greetings. Happy Tuesday. Welcome to the Steve Deace Show. Here live and on demand on Blaze TV, radio, and podcast. I'm Steve Deace alongside Todd Erzin and Aaron McIntyre. And we are brought to you by our friends over at Trust and Will. To get the most out of life, you've got to be prepared. And a lot of us don't realize that a will doesn't necessarily cover everything when it comes to estate planning. That's why Trust and Will can help to ensure that your loved ones are covered when it comes to things like major medical decisions and power of attorney. So just go to trustandwill.com/Deace. Get 20% off their simple, secure, expert-backed estate planning services. And we do that at our house. Before we brought them on board and I recommended them to you, we tried it out for ourselves. Amy walked me through it, gave it a sterling review, and we've been using Trust and Will in our home ever since. So you can't control everything, but with their easy-to-use website, simple to navigate, all right, Trust and Will can help you to take control of protecting your family's future by going to trustandwill.com/Deace. Trustandwill.com/Deace, the word and. Trustandwill.com/Deace, 20% off there. Trustandwill.com/Deace. Excited for the bottom of the hour, the return of an old friend. It's kind of, I don't think it's coincidental in light of the I think, prophetic moment RFK Jr. had in the Senate last week. Kind of getting reunited with some old friends from an era that we'd otherwise like to forget, except for some of the good people we met along the way. Ed Dowd was on yesterday. Our old friend, Dr. Ryan Cole, is on the show at the bottom of the hour. I'm heading out to actually Idaho, heading out his way next week in Boise to do a free event with the Idaho Family Policy Center. If you want to check that out there, hope to see some of you guys out there next week. I think that's next Thursday, I want to say. So Dr. Cole will join us here at the bottom of the hour. Next hour, fake news or not, with a meme that hits hard. It's hard, and we are going to discuss it. And then at the bottom of the hour, are we at the end of one of the most successful horror movie franchises in the history of cinema, the final Conjuring movie in theaters? Went and saw it on Friday night. I'll give you a review. And it's also very interesting in that this could very well be the most overtly religious series of films Hollywood has made in any genre in quite a long period of time. I mean, religious lingo, religious imagery is these films are satiated in it. And the final one here, even the title, Last Rites, is not a coincidence. So we will get into that coming up with Pop Culture Tuesday towards the end of the show. But let's kick this thing off as we often do and always do when things are running smoothly. Aaron's rundown of what happened while we were away.
What happened while we were away, brought to you by Danger Signs. According to a new report from the Labor Department, annual revisions to non-farm payrolls data for the year prior to March of this year showed a drop of 911,000 from the initial estimates. The total revisions was on the high end of Wall Street expectations. They were more than 50% higher than last year's adjustment. As some have already pointed out, such a stark revision to the jobs numbers are likely the real reason Trump fired the commissioner of the Bureau of Labor Statistics, as this data also means there was likely virtually no job creation during the last year of the Biden administration, and macroeconomic decisions by government and Wall Street have been based off of faulty data. President Trump is shining the spotlight on the murder of Irina Zarutska, that young female Ukrainian refugee stabbed to death on a Charlotte light rail train last month.
I just give my love and hope to the family of the young woman who was stabbed this morning or last night in Charlotte by a madman, a lunatic. Just got up and started. It's right on the tape. It's not really watchable because it's so horrible. But just viciously stabbed. She's just sitting there. You know, when you have horrible killings, you have to take horrible actions. And the actions that we take are nothing. This cashless bail started a wave in our country where a killer kills somebody and is out on the street by the afternoon. In many cases, going out and killing again.
Trump made those comments at the Museum of the Bible in Washington, D.C. yesterday, where he also said there's a bias that nobody talks about.
I created the first ever Department of Justice task force to eradicate anti-Christian bias. And for those people that are a little bit naive or not well-read, there is a tremendous anti-Christian bias. We don't hear about it. We don't think about it. You hear about anti-Semitic but you don't hear about anti-Christian. Now, you have a strong anti-Christian bias, but we're ending that rapidly.
The Supreme Court said yesterday the Trump administration can continue to carry out immigration raids in California. The temporary decision came down 6-3 and will take effect while the main case plays out in lower courts. Speaking of the Supreme Court, Justice Amy Coney Barrett took an interview for Reasons with CBS News. Here she is discussing the Dobbs decision.
The central message of Dobbs did not render abortion illegal. Dobbs did not say anything about whether abortion is immoral. Dobbs said that these are questions that are left to the states. All of these kinds of questions, decisions that you mentioned that require medical judgments, are not ones that the Constitution commits to the court, to decide how far into pregnancy the right of abortion might extend. The court was in the business of drawing a lot of those lines before. And what Dobbs says is that those calls are properly left to the democratic process. And the states have been working those out. There's been a lot of legislative activity and a lot of state constitutional activity since the decision in Dobbs was rendered.
Now, this NBC News survey went viral yesterday, polling Gen Z on what they define as life success, sorted by whom they voted for. The headline result is that among Zoomer men who voted for Trump, their number one definition of success in life is having children. Among Zoomer women, their last place definition of success among Zoomer women who voted for Kamala is having children. But amongst Zoomer women who voted for Trump, having children being their definition of success is the middle of the road, with financial independence and having a career being ranked higher. Israel's military targeted senior Hamas leadership in Qatar with an airstrike today. They said in a statement, quote, "For years, these members of the Hamas leadership have led the terrorist organization's operations and are directly responsible for the brutal October 7th massacre. Prior to the strike, measures were taken in order to mitigate harm to civilians, including the use of precise munitions and additional intelligence," end quote. Back at home, big pharma shill Scott Gottlieb went on CNBC the other day to preen about RFK Jr.
He's going to put on the next agenda the hepatitis B vaccine. We all know. He's looking at MMRV vaccine, trying to obviate use of the MMRV vaccine, which is measles, mumps, rubella, and varicella. I believe he's going to claim in his autism report that there's an association between alum, which is the adjuvant used in most pediatric vaccines, and autism, which is going to set in place a litigation enterprise against the vaccine to potentially bankrupt the vaccine injury compensation program. So that could take down the whole pediatric vaccine enterprise.
Oh. No.
Deal.
Yeah!
President Trump posted on Truth Social yesterday an old video of scientists warning about thimerosal, a vaccine ingredient with high levels of mercury. The compound was removed or reduced from vaccines beginning in 1999, or so we're told. And finally, 8 months into the Trump administration, let's check in on Nancy Pelosi's mental health.
Well, ever since I left Congress, my trades are I can't get any insider information anymore, and these won't tell me anything anymore. So I've been drinking a lot more. My husband's still in love with a homeless hammer guy, visiting him in jail and so it hasn't been easy. Okay.
And that's what happened while we were away. There's some AI slop for you on a Tuesday morning.
Aaron woke up and chose violence.
Oh, my. Bad segue alert. Aaron's montage brought to you by our friends over at Preborn, who might have wished that the ending of Aaron's montage had never actually been born. But they are doing everything they can to save as many babies as they can, and they're doing it with your help. Your generosity has helped them save almost 40,000 babies so far this year. Let's keep it going. For as little as $28, your tax-deductible donation can fund an ultrasound that doubles a baby's chance at not being murdered by his mother. And I would argue significantly increases the chances that mama also will not sear her own conscience in opposition to her creator at the same time. So keep it going with that generosity. And I've not mentioned this in a while, but this is kind of the thing I love about them the most, is it's not just about making sure the baby is born, but then trying to give a new family the guidance and help it needs to take its first steps together. So they're there with prenatal care, postnatal care, all of that, up to counseling, car seats, really practical things, diapers. All of that is free of charge to the mom and her baby as well. And that's where you and I come in to make it so. Go to preborn.com/Steve. That's preborn.com/Steve, or dial #250, say the keyword baby on your mobile phone. or go to preborn.com/Steve. Dilemma. Let's get this out of the way first, because I do want to spend most of the time here talking about the NBC News survey results from Aaron that he talked about with Gen Z men and women. So looking at the corrected job numbers now going back retroactively all the way to the final year of the Biden presidency. We, as Aaron has pointed out, have had an extremely sluggish job market for a while, especially if you are an actual American, somebody who was born in this country, under the jurisdiction of the United States, not illegally, which kind of makes the argument that the Fed should have been cutting rates a long time ago, like maybe February, March. And it's starting to look now like this is kind of the cooked data, like with the COVID data. Mr. President, you're going to kill 2 million people if you don't do this. Here's what the data shows, which they never showed. They never showed us. And people like us were among the first to start actually looking at their data and calling BS on it, right? It's starting to look like some of these jobs, economic numbers, to some degree. We still have real kitchen table problems. I still paid $300 for a scrub brush, a case of ice cream sundae, Diet A&W soda, which, by the way, is incredible. Okay, just throw that out there. Right? It's absolutely incredible. And 5 bags of groceries, 2 of which were toiletries. That still cost me $300 at Walmart last Sunday night. So that still happened. Right? Stuff still is too expensive. So we are, the whole thing is not cooked. Like there was actually a virus. People were actually in danger. But the way that it was framed was, you could tell, in search of a narrative and not a solution to a real problem. Right? And it was a narrative to get an outcome we wanted, or that they wanted. And the outcome was to win that election. And so everything they reported on was to feed the narrative and to keep the narrative going. That's why drugs like hydroxychloroquine. In fact, you know what? Let's just do this. Rename hydroxychloroquine and ivermectin interest rates. And I think you have a very similar story. We have real economic issues. We have spent too much money, and the president does, frankly, play a role in that. Now, I don't think he is the singular culprit here. And I think a lot of the things that he thought he was doing temporarily because of a national emergency, had he been recognized as the winner and continued on in a second term, I don't think he would have made a lot of the symptoms that he played a part in establishing. I don't think he would have made them as acute and chronic as the regime that took over ended up doing. Is that fair?
Yeah.
But there was always going to be a comeuppance. Uncle Bingo was always going to have to pay the check for just printing money, 80% of all the dollar bills ever printed in the history of the American money supply in a span of 3 years. That was always going to happen. All right. But the decisions made by the Biden regime on top of that just took that problem and made it worse. Almost like it was Cloward pivot in action, almost like it was managed decline on purpose. And so now, just like we can't have drugs that might help alleviate the symptoms of a real disease, right? So if we cut interest rates so more people are liquid, we can move more homes. People can go buy cars and, even just do upgrades of their current homes at more reasonable interest rates with all that equity they're sitting on, like a HELOC or something like that. Is that a panacea? Is that going to solve the overall problem we have? Is that going to do that?
No.
But is it going to alleviate the symptoms of the problem in ways that most people are probably going to feel? Yeah. Similarly, if we sent everybody hydroxychloroquine and ivermectin and said, hey, you see any symptoms whatsoever at all, like what we're telling you about whatsoever, any cold or flu-like symptoms at all, start taking these preemptively as prophylactics right away. Would it have ended the pandemic? Probably not. We're still dealing with a virus created in a lab, and we don't necessarily know how it's going to mutate, how it's going to behave. It's not going to end it, but many of the overall, epidemiological symptoms we had because of that, would that have been way better than the solutions they gave us, the masks, the lockdowns, the 6 feet of distance? Of course it would have been. It would have been much stronger.
Nothing would have been way better.
Correct.
So of course.
So that bar is low, fair. But one slate of options was given to you in order to further a narrative, not to seek a solution to a crisis. And it kind of feels like the Fed and interest rates now are the new Fauci and ivermectin and hydroxychloroquine. I think that's an apropos analogy.
Yeah.
Now, here's the challenge I think that we have, though. How do you message that in an election when you're messaging against those you're not actually running against? Is Jerome Powell going to be on a ballot? How many people even know what a Jerome Powell even is?
They don't.
Right? How many people are going to know about these absolutely cooked job numbers? And remember, we knew they were cooked. How many? We said here how many months last year there would be the initial report and then the revision way down like a few weeks later. That happened like every month last year. We followed the whole thing, right? Okay. So they were cooked on top of how much they were already cooked, if that tells you anything. How many people are going to be aware of that, going to know that, right? And you guys tell me, how do you message in an election setting against that which you're not actually running against? Because that to quote George Bailey's uncle in It's a Wonderful Life, it's this sticky wicket, George.
I think it's impossible because we have a supply and a demand side problem. The supply side is Republican or Democrat forever. You've been spun all kinds of lies from the government side, the media side, and then the demand side, fiscal sanity, what? Like, as you said, where's the appetite for that? Sports bro? No, not there. They've been lighting themselves on fire. There's just too much money. I mean, we do not have a base on either side of this thing. You're asking the impossible, Steve. It's going to take a miracle.
Aaron?
Miracle, yeah. I mean, it's just one, if you go down one or two layers as to what's actually impacting the microeconomy, people's eyes glaze over and you're already screwed in terms of messaging. And it's true. I mean, I've done more reading on the economy and the interdependencies of global trade. And, you know, I've gone very, very shallow into this pool and it's really complicated. People just want to know, am I going to be able to afford my cart at Walmart?
Yeah.
Can you just answer that question for me?
Yeah. Can I buy Christmas gifts here in a month or so?
Yeah. And the reality is it should not be this complicated. It really shouldn't be. But it is because we haven't really been living in a free market for a generation now. We really haven't. And these are some of the friction points that we were always going to end up experiencing. So
I can tell somebody in the audience like, well, you're Mr. Messaging, Deace. Why don't you tell us? I don't know. That's why I asked these guys. I think everybody knows I don't mind showing off what I think I'm good at, right? Even if I'm not. All right. I'll just lack the self-awareness to think I am anyway. If I thought there was a master message for this, I just would have just suggested, here's how we're going to have to do this. I don't have a clue. I really don't know. That's why I asked you guys. I don't know. And to me, I'm starting to really warm up to what Ed Dowd said on the show yesterday. Just let this thing tank right now.
Yeah.
Let the AI bubble pop right now. All right. Let the housing market bubble. Let the housing market thing, let prices collapse now. We're heading into October, November. Even in good economies, we're heading into the slowest time of year for real estate anyway. And 2/3 of the country, people don't want to move in November, December, January, and February anyway, unless they have to, right? If there was ever a time just to take your hands off the wheel and stop holding back the inevitable, I think Ed is correct in what he said yesterday. Now is the time. Because here's the thing. People are still going to buy Christmas gifts. They may not buy as expensive of gifts, but we're Americans. We're going to figure out a way to buy our kids. Most people are going to figure out a way. So you're going to get some insulation just from that. You see, from the peak retail season of Christmas, right? Now, to me, I think Ed is correct. And I kind of was startled at when he said it at first yesterday. But the more I think about this, and especially after this conversation, I think now you just take your hands off the wheel, let the AI bubble pop, let people's housing values, recalibrate, force the Fed into a position where the fig leaf for the excuses for why it doesn't have to cut rates is removed, make them do it. And hopefully by next spring again, after winter, okay, the dog days of winter, things are kicking up into gear. That gives you 3, 4, 5, 6 months to try to reshape the environment with some renewed optimism rather than keep grinding at this thing over and over again, and then they just drop this thing on you in March of next year like COVID all over again. All right, let's go to this NBC News survey. All right. Who does this sound like? Number one priority, financial independence, 40%. Number two priority, fulfilling job career, 32%. Number three priority, owning your own home, 30%. Number five priority, having money to do the things you want, 27%. Second to last priority, making family and community proud, 14%. What profile of a voter would you say that sounds like?
Voted for Kamala.
Yeah. That's actually the women who voted for Trump in that same NBC News poll. There's a lot of talk. I mean, in the same NBC News poll, having children ranked 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6th on that list of priorities for the women who voted for Trump. 6th. Now, let's assume that that's somewhat because, chances are older women or married women who maybe have they're at the tail end of their child rearing phase or they're done with it, right? What's the only generation that voted for Trump? Gen X. That's our generation, right? Mm-hmm. So that means you're not, maybe not yet an empty nester, but you're probably past the age of when you're having new kids, unless it's a surprise. Fair? Mm-hmm. So let's assume that's part of it. But I mean, when this poll came out, when Aaron shared the top line result, that was the initial reaction I had that everybody else had, which is, man, we talked about this. I spoke to a group of liberty activists in Iowa last night, and I said, hey, if you are if you are even a moderately attractive conservative woman in Gen Z, props to you. All right? Raise your standard, because it's supply and demand, baby, and you're short in supply. All right? So they're going to come a knocking. And it was later that I saw the inverse numbers here. And what struck me is you can see feminist tropes in here. And you can see how widespread and acute this is among women, no matter how they vote. And it's kind of emblematic of the differences between most Republicans and most Democrats. Most Democrats are just avowed communists. Most Republicans are not communists, but they're not necessarily on the side of light or a clear alternative to it. They just think what the Democrats are doing at the rate they're doing is kind of icky. But what's the alternative rubric? What's the alternative ethos to Marxism, right? You see what I'm saying? And maybe it's because I already understood where the other side was, that it was just gone. We're going to be unevenly yoked. You just can't mate with that. I mean, you just can't, guys. Don't do it. And the surest path to any man becoming a communist is to marry one every single time. Every single time. Right? This is biblical. This is Rachel lamenting her sons marrying pagan wives. Right? All the way through. Don't do it. But this is way more seeped into. Actually, no, I take it back. It's only for Gen Z. So that accommodation that I offered that many of the women that voted for Trump would be. So since it's only Gen Z, then no, it is actually as bad as I thought. So those priorities aren't really that much different. The percentages are a little different, but the top line priorities are not that much different than the women who voted for Kamala either. We have there's a real woman problem. A real woman problem. Now, I still believe the solution to that and to almost everything in our culture are the men. Because the men are made first. Correct. Responsibility begins with the men. The men were given headship. All right. So then since responsibility begins with them, change and accountability begins where? With them. But I do think this data is clearly indicative of the fact that feminism has seeped into the overall water table of too much of the fairer sex, no matter how you voted in this last election, when it comes to Gen Z in particular. Thoughts?
It's the same problem that we got done talking about last time. We have an issue on the supply and the demand side. The supply side, are these conservative gals? They think they're conservative because they're a Christian. What messages about this are they getting in church?
I'll just tell you, my son and I love Des Moines Christian. I don't regret a single check I wrote to Des Moines Christian for 6 years. And it'll turn out being one of the best investments I ever made in my son. But just to show you how acute and widespread this is, I'd be lying if I didn't tell you the last couple of years, my son Noah and I had quite a few conversations about his struggles to find a girl at school that he thought was cute, at Des Moines Christian, that he thought was cute and wasn't for abortion. And that's at Des Moines Christian, man.
Yeah.
What's going on everywhere else? Is that kind of what you're saying?
Yeah, well, yeah. So they're not hearing the message. And also, people think they're conservative. Do they really want fiscal conservatism? Does that message work? No. Do a lot of the women or the men really prioritize their life?
I want this generic cultural ethos that I myself don't necessarily have to live to. Yeah.
Rejecting the icky is not promoting the good.
It's a first step to it.
Automatically by default. It is a first step, but
you're stillborn if you stop there.
Do you remember, you talked about it, you brought it up. There was that, Aaron highlighted, there was a blonde liberal gal who made a post about how it felt to go out with like a cowboy.
Yeah, there's like a TikTok video a couple of years ago.
I'm telling you, she said it was a real man. You know what she didn't say? Man, I really do love the Sports Bro video game toy lightsaber guy. That's not what made her swoon. We love to lie to ourselves on the supply side and the demand side. And then we say it's their fault or it's their fault. It's all of our faults. Our bar is subterranean.
This poll, I want to parse it some other way to avoid the conclusion that I think we have to come to. But this poll is an utter embarrassment for the last generations of fathers.
Yep.
It's just an utter embarrassment. One way or another, you can slice it different ways. Either they were not the guy in the house calling the shots, and so the daughters just think that this is the way things are, or even if they are, they're not rearing their daughters in a way that actually, carries forth civilization. So I'd like to parse this in a different way, being like, hey, the Gen Z women who voted for Trump, they have a higher importance on being financially independent because they don't think they're going to be able to find a Gen Z dude who voted for Trump who's going to be able to be financially independent himself or not interested in building a family. I'd like to parse it different ways, but I just think it's unavoidable. Utter failure of fathers in the last generation, because now we have multiple generations. We're stringing along generations of women that have just been, and I don't even think, I'm going to make some people upset. I don't think even in the church, you just said it here, Steve, how deep feminism has gotten rooted into the church, into the thinking, and into this country. I don't think people even realize.
Isn't that what's kind of called the longhouse? Is that what we're kind of describing here? Is that term for it? Really? That how much of this sort of matriarchy has just seeped into everything. And here's the thing you need to understand. All pagan societies succumb to some form of matriarchy. A divine goddess, some form of offering to the divine goddess for fertility, those sorts of things. There's a form of matriarchal worship. High priestess. There's a form of matriarchal worship in virtually every pagan society. Well, Steve, how do they do that at the same time, treating women as second-class citizens? Well, I mean, whatever is ugly, false, and terrible, they simultaneously do. That's the very definition of paganism. More in a moment. So when you hear the national debt is over $37 trillion, do you think, maybe now might be a good time to buy some gold? Well, you're not alone, because looking at the price of gold, that's what everybody else is thinking as well. All right, so how about some sensible diversification with our friends over at BIRCH Gold Group? They believe every American should own physical gold, and so they've created something special until September the 30th. If you are a first-time gold buyer, BIRCH Gold is offering a rebate of up to $10,000 in free metals on qualifying purchases. To claim eligibility and start the process, request an info kit now by texting Steve to 989898. Text Steve to 989898. Plus, BIRCH Gold can help you roll an existing IRA or 401k into an IRA in gold. And you are still eligible for that free rebate in free metals for up to $10,000 as well. BIRCH Gold is the only precious metals company you're going to need. So make right now your first time to buy gold and take advantage of a rebate of up to $10,000 when you buy by September the 30th. Text my name, Steve, to 989898. Text Steve to 989898. Claim your eligibility and get your free info kit on gold. Again, text my name, Steve, to 989898. Well, I'm going to be in his neck of the woods here in about 9 days, but it is good to see an old friend of the program back with us here. Dr. Ryan Cole is with us. My man, how you doing, brother?
Doing super duper. Great to see you, Steve. Looking forward to your visit.
You bet. Looking forward to being out there. I love Boise. Traveling there ain't fun, but the location and the people there are great. All right, so I'm looking forward to it. But I think the reason why, we're talking to some of the old haunts during the COVID era that all of us want to forget, even though we made some good friends, people like you, but we all want to forget that era of how terrible it was. But it feels like we are getting as close maybe to the tribunal we all think should have happened. We're getting as close to that as maybe we're going to get with what's happening right now at CDC with RFK Jr. And then the pinnacle of all this, the Senate hearing that occurred last week. I was on Eric Metaxas' show this morning talking about it. And I mean, as a metaphor, I'm not giving it a moral equivalency, but metaphorically, I was like, brother, that was like Moses at Pharaoh's court just laying down ordinance. I mean, I was right to their faces. One guy in the gap, come at me in the arena. I got all y'all. I'm not afraid. And I mean, I don't say this word a lot doing what I do, working full time in politics for going on 20 years, Ryan. But brother, that was inspiring. What do you think?
That Star Chamber hearing, he was in that gauntlet, and he ran the gauntlet, and he stood up to lies. And I think as you always say, in the spirit of the age, what we're up against evil, we're up against lies. We don't use those terms too often in science until the last 5 years, and now we do. He's standing for humanity. He's standing for truth. Is he a perfect vessel in the process? Of course not. None of us are. But he stood up to those who were funded by pharma, by the deep pockets of lobbyists, by corruption, and he told the truth. And that's all we can hope for in this day and age after what we've gone through for so many years, is just someone say what's true. And I think that's what the people crave. And I do think, accountability, whether it comes in the form we all want it to come, who knows? But at the very least, we have an advocate in the right position doing the right thing, and we've shifted the Overton window. Who would think that we would have Aaron Siri in the Senate, coming up today,
right?
Speaking about vaccines, speaking about hidden truth, speaking about hidden science. Who would think that we would have Kennedy as Secretary of HHS? We've made progress, and I think people need to be patient. I'm as frustrated as many are, but I think if we continue to support both his efforts and getting a better team around him, what he's accomplished in this brief period of time without his team in place has actually been impressive. Mm-hmm. And to even see Trump finally tweeting at Pfizer saying, hey, I've seen some numbers. You better tell me the truth now. Mm-hmm. That's encouraging as well. So things are shifting. Is it perfect yet? No, it's not. But to have men of strength and men of decency standing in the right place, in the right way, at the right time is inspiring for all of us.
I mean, just to show you how much a crowbar has been taken to the Overton window here, I do my best to avoid Fox News. So I find it to be, for our side, a largely emasculating force. It's a little bit like when your wife is ovulating and you're trying to have kids, and someone starts sending you a bunch of pictures of your grandmother. Okay, and that's kind of what I think. That's kind of the influence Fox is for the most part on my own team. I only see it when I'm on my lifting days at the gym, and they've got all the TVs, all the screens up there. So I can at least see what they're covering and talking about, right, in between sets and stuff. And it blew my mind. Monday was leg day, Ryan, and it blew my mind to look up there and to see the amount of lifting, heavy lifting, that Fox News as a network was doing on Monday morning for RFK Jr. It blew my mind. This is the same network that fired Emerald Robinson and Brandon Morello because they wouldn't take the toxic genetic serum. All right. This is the same network that took the Biden mandate and imposed it on all of its employees. And now here we are, and they are literally doing repair work. They're like doing triage on behalf of RFK Jr. It blew my mind to see that. That was a clear sign. CNN later in the day, I saw, had a poll that showed in the last 30 years, support for the childhood vaccine schedule has gone down since you and I basically graduated from high school. It's gone down from 81% to 51%. So things are moving here to some varying degree. Where they're going to end up is still up for grabs, but things are definitely moving.
I think the shackles are off. I think RFK is going to do some pretty bold things here in the next couple of days. I don't know if you saw Trump's tweet about thimerosal yesterday, and old video by Dr. Mark Geyer about thimerosal being poison. Now, granted, those have been taken out of shots, which is great. However, I think he's tuning into the fact that there have been a lot of poisons put into children for many decades now. So I think RFK has the leeway and the runway now to go forward, especially with the autism report coming up. I think there will be some surprises there. And I mean, for Fox News, the soy milk latte of mainstream news to start drinking black coffee for a change is great. So, that they're reporting on those things is wonderful. And I think that people are talking about it, and people care, because this is their children, this is their grandchildren, this is grandma and grandpa, still getting some of these genetic serums. So it's relevant to everybody's day-to-day life. And now that we can talk about it and challenge this cult of all vaccines good, it's progress in society, and I'm hoping that more people will continue to listen. And as we share with boldness and kindness and that cowboy black coffee boldness, we will get the truth forward every day and be able to continue to show the science. I think Trump is hearing some inklings of science in his ear, and I'm hoping people are getting a little past Susie Wiles, his chief of staff. I think somebody has gotten to him with truth, and that's exceedingly optimistic and hopeful for many of us.
I don't know if you saw the clip this morning, Scott Gottlieb on CNBC, the pharma shill that was an FDA commissioner for Trump in the first term, just again to show you how much things have just shifted just in the last couple of years. But he was warning that if RFK Jr. Pursues what he's looking at and telling the truth about the childhood vaccine schedule will cause the liability fund to be exhausted and maybe do permanent damage to the childhood vaccine schedule. Except he was saying this as if this would be a bad thing. And I'm watching this. I'm like, that doesn't mean what you think it means, right? I'm like watching this like I'm on Princess Bride. I mean, why would that exhaust the liability shield? Why would it do that? I mean, unless you were committing acts you were liable for? What am I missing, Ryan? You're the MD here. I mean, because it seems to me the only thing that would exhaust the liability shield would be acts of liability. But what do I know? I barely made it out of community college. So you've treated 50,000 some odd patients in your career. So you tell me what that means.
Yeah, I say a better thing couldn't happen to worse people. Let that shield go away. Let's protect the next generations. To your Princess Bride reference, my name is Inigo Montoya. You harmed my children, prepare to die.
Yes.
So, let's bring it to them. Let the truth roll forward, and let's be bold in telling the truth. Gosh, if certain laws have to go away, liability shields have to go away, wonderful. No one should have liability protection for any product. This is what we need. We need truth. We need transparency. We need accountability. And these people are just crying over spilled milk. The fact that they're losing their game, they're losing their influence, they're losing their hold on a narrative that's been alive for decades. Sure, they're shaking in their pants, and they may have to buy a new pair of Depends or two, or better underoos or whatever. But at this point, they're scared, and they should be, because the truth is coming out, and it's going to continue to come out. And we're going to continue in the health freedom movement to tell the truth. As a senior fellow with the Independent Medical Alliance, we're working on policy with HHS from the outside in, at least trying to influence and make these changes. Let that 1986 Act, that liability shield, go away. Let these pharmaceutical companies have to prove their science. Let the literature be true again and not biased. So I think we're at a good inflection point in history, and I hope we continue to go forward as a team with kindness, with boldness, and make this change happen.
Before we let you go, let's spend the last few minutes talking about, is there a singular, achievable big move that could leave a lasting legacy that outlives, nothing is certain. We don't even know it's possible we lose 40 House seats next year, and RFK Jr., Pete Hegseth, Marco Rubio, Donald Trump are just doing 2 years of impeachment hearings in the House. That's very possible, right? So is there something achievable but big that would be a paradigm shift that would outlive the current political environment that we're not entirely in control of? And I'm going to propose something, and you tell me if you like it or if you have a counter. And that would be, because this would require, in my view, an exhausting of a lot of your political capital, pull something like that off. To me, that kind of move would be banning big pharma advertising from television, because I think that hits on two fronts. Now, some of this, of course, is because 2020 was the year of the scamdemic, but 75% of all TV ads in the year 2020 were big pharma ads. Now, those numbers began to stabilize in 2022, but we have still seen about a 12% increase year to year from 22 until through the first half of this year in the amount of money spent by big pharma on TV. It's in the billions. A lot of these fake media are being propped up just by these ads from big pharma. We're one of the last countries left, even in the industrialized world, that permits this in the first place. To me, you offer them a choice. We get rid of letting you shill on TV or the liability shield, but you can't have both, so pick one. And if we got rid of that, we would greatly disarm our media. The New York Times might go back to being skeptical of corporate America again, like they did when we were kids, Ryan. And what do you think of that?
I think that's brilliant. I agree. The United States and New Zealand are the only two that allow pharmaceutical advertising in the entire world. And once you take away that influence, once you take away that funding of media, then those reporters may actually have to go back to reporting instead of propaganda. And I think that would be a fantastic legacy. And then we won't hear about their mRNA technologies. We won't hear about their immune modulators. I'm not going to name any particular drugs, but the ones you hear on every sports show every weekend. Once that goes away, and that influence of ask your doctor about this, and if all these symptoms that you're going to suffer from are okay for you, and that guy that talks fast at the end, once that goes away, their money goes away. Mm-hmm. And then they go away as the legacy media that they are. They go into the dustbin of history, because they'll actually have to do news and reporting again, and not just do the bidding of their handlers, basically. So I think that would be a great step, and that would be a great legacy. And if we can make that happen before the worrying vote in the midterms, that would be great. And let's hope we can hold the House. And I think people need to stay engaged, but at the end of the day, that would be I think an earthquake and ground shifting in the direction of information and how information is obtained through media sources. And it would give, I think, the independent media the stronger voice going forward as well. So I think that's brilliant. I like that idea. And I know it's been toyed with from the executive branch. And I know Bobby Kennedy would be behind that. And so many of us would be behind that as well. So I think it's a brilliant idea. I agree.
Good to see you, my friend. Hope I can see you next week out there in Idaho when I'm there for the Idaho Family Policy Center, okay?
Let's do lunch, my friend. It would be great.
You got it. We'll see you then. Take care. Have you guys, Todd and Aaron, your reaction to that? And have you seen the clip of Theo Vaughn interviewing the Amish kid, teenager?
No.
Yeah. And he's like, you guys don't do any technology and stuff, so, what's ADHD like in the Amish community? He's like, the kid did not even know what it was. Never even heard of it. Didn't know what it was. It reminded me of that clip during the scamdemic where some Pennsylvania station went out to one of the Amish communities and said, hey, what's happening with COVID here? Why is there not any lockdown? Well, we don't have TV. That's kind of what it reminded me of. All right, but your guys' reaction to that conversation with Ryan Cole.
When it comes to RFK Jr., that clip of Scott Gottlieb that I played on the montage last segment, I cut it off right before he went on to say some other things. You know who agrees with Dr. Cole about RFK Jr. and how much he's accomplished and how effective he's been despite not having a full staff around him? Scott Gottlieb does, actually. He mentioned how, from a different perspective, obviously, than we have, he mentioned how effective and systematic he has been in his work. So all of these kind of intra-MAHA fights that we experienced in the first few months of the Trump administration, I do start to sense that there has been a lot of strategery going on behind the scenes in terms of what we're actually trying to accomplish here. And I think everything is still on the table. And how can you not be optimistic for that?
Yeah.
Amen.
I'm noted for not being particularly patient about things, but I've been counseling a lot of the people online who want justice and want justice right now. Ryan Cole seems like a more even-tempered guy than me, and he's got reason to be mad, though. I mean, he was put on trial for his license. He understands the magical power of vaccines. This is as close to witchcraft as you get. Yes, it was going to take a while to knock it all down. And so it's important to understand, yes, Donald Trump is mercurial about all issues. So he seems like he's saying one thing and another still to this day on some things. This thing is a multi-headed hydra, and you got to have patience on it. And thank you, Steve, for exposing what you just exposed once again about the magical power of vaccines when you talked about the garbage, what do you need to be protected from? That's been the law. It's been there forever, and it was there before COVID. A lot of people just didn't want to hear it.
When we come back, fake news or not, with a fairly devastating meme, but does it go too far? Let's discuss next. All right, back here with Hour 2, live and on demand on Blaze TV, radio, and podcast. Steve Deace here with Todd Erzin and Aaron McIntyre. Let us know what you think about what we think via the stevedeace.com inbox. Steve at stevedeace.com, DEACE. Like us on Facebook, me, we, and Gab. You can follow me at Steve Deace Show on X, Instagram, and TikTok. You can also attempt, and we mean attempt, to subscribe to our new YouTube channel at Deace Show on YouTube. That's at Deace Show on YouTube. And then also you can subscribe to the podcast by hitting subscribe, or if you're on Apple iTunes, follow. That's how you'll know for sure that every time we do one of these, 240 of them a year, it shows up right there in your podcast feed every single time. You can also leave us a 5-star review, and that helps us to find more people just like you. And not to mention, it boosts our rather fragile egos. So thank you very much for the tens of thousands of those we've received as well. This part of the show brought to you by our colleague, Allie Stuckey. Her upcoming Share the Arrows event, October the 11th in Dallas, designed to encourage, equip, and speak truth into women who are trying to stand firm in this world. And if you look at the polling data on Gen Z from NBC News that we just shared with you, I think this might be a need, folks. I think this might be a need. All right, so Katie Faust, who's going to be on our show here soon, is one of the speakers at this event. Taylor Dukes and more. Francesca Battistelli is going to be doing the worship. So it's for your wife, your daughter, your sister in your life who needs something like this. If you're a husband, dad, or brother listening, perfect gift idea. Maybe Christmas comes early. VIP options are still available as well. Go to sharethearrows.com. That's sharethearrows.com. Again, sharethearrows.com. And don't forget, you can also subscribe to Blaze TV. That way you won't miss the overtime coming up after our show today. That's when we'll tape that, then upload it for Blaze TV subscribers. And all of the exclusive content we do each and every day right here on Blaze TV. Become a subscriber. Get $20 off right now with the promo code Deace. It'll be just $8 a month, 26 cents a day. I have to believe even Todd is worth 26 cents a day. Like if the network was just Todd, would that be worth 26 cents a day, Todd? I think so.
Best 26 a day you've ever spent, quite frankly.
At least a quarter. We'll round it down. It's worth at least a quarter.
Better.
Yes. There's got to be a quarter somewhere in your car, in between seats or something, a quarter. Right? It's got to be worth at least that. 26 cents a day, $8 a month for $20 off an annual subscription to Blaze TV when you go to blazetv.com/Deace and use the promo code Deace for the discount on the subscription. blazetv.com/Deace, promo code Deace, and that's how you'll join us in the mission. Make sure you miss nothing that we do. Each and every piece of content is available to you. blazetv.com/Deace, promo code Deace. All right, you guys ready for some fake news or not?
Let's go.
I saw this meme a couple days ago, and I'll read it to you for those of you who are listening to the podcast and cannot see it. But if you want to see it, I did post this on my X account at Steve Deace Show. The slippery slope in rainbow colors. Just let us get married, that is all. Just bake our cake, that is all. Just use our pronouns. So we start with a bit of a descent, and then it becomes quite steep. Let us dance in drag for your children. Let teachers choose your kids' gender. Let us buy infants from surrogates. And the meme ends with, you are here. The demons are telling me to kill Christians. Now, I have been saying all this year that the greatest heresy in the last era of the church is seeker sensitivism took the second greatest commandment, love your neighbor as you love yourself, and made it number one. And we could not say things that would offend our neighbor. They may never come back and hear the gospel, and we've doomed them in their sins. It's like the whole thing is up to us, by the way. But that's a topic for another day. This was the excuse for watered down, banal, vapid preaching in the last generation. And it was fine to offend God, but we could not offend our neighbors. And that needs to be reversed, and things need to be put in their right and proper order. Love your neighbor is very important, but nothing is more important than to love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. On the other hand, we have to make sure that we do not now abandon love your neighbor as yourself. We're not allowed to do that either. Steve, this seems hard. Well, it is called a narrow road. That would imply difficulty, a degree at least of it. So we cannot abandon love your neighbor as we love ourselves either. So we cannot become like our enemies to defeat them. But I would also surmise that our current rules of engagement are nowhere near the limits of God in his word in many cases. And that our current show position is, except that which the word of God explicitly says not to do everything else it takes to win. And we're all in agreement on that, right?
Yes.
Unless the word of God says, don't do that, do everything else it takes to win. For the most part, we're nowhere near. Don't do the stuff God says not to do to win. We're nowhere near it. In the church, anyway. We're not anywhere near it. A couple of exceptions. Which is why I'm way more interested right now in escalating the engagement than trying to referee it or tone it down. That being said, we do need to check ourselves every now and then We cannot bear false witness even against our enemies. We can't do it. For while we were his enemies, Christ died for us. So I bring all that up as a preamble to say about this meme, on fake news or not, fair or foul, does it go too far? What do you guys think?
No.
Of course
Aaron?
not.
Aaron's a no first. All right, Aaron, you're up first. Go ahead.
Listen, 20 years ago, that very top graphic, just let us get married, that's all. What do you care what consenting adults do in the privacy of their bedroom, you bigots? You just hate us. That's all it was. It's just, they want the tax benefits that traditionally married couples enjoy. Things of that nature. That's all. That's all we wanted. And what have I always said? That the English teacher is the very first programmer in the public school system, in our academic system. Why? Because when you start to take high school English, and certainly in college, when you take those English classes, what's your very first foray into fallacies, learning about fallacies?
Mm-hmm.
That's English. It's the English class. And what's the one thing they harp on every single time? Slippery slope argument is a fallacy. Well, why is it a fallacy? Because if you use a slippery slope argument, eventually it's going to come apart on you. Well, you just used a slippery slope argument to argue against slippery slope. It's never made any sense whatsoever.
Right. Everything's relative, Aaron.
Everything's relative. So that was always, that's the slippery slope. You were saying this. I remember in 2006, 2007 on WHO, you saw the future. You said that this would end up in the undefining of gender altogether.
Mm-hmm.
Look where we are. 20 years later, a mere 10 years later, after Obergefell. So, yes, not every single person on that spectrum is going to end up saying, the demons are telling me to kill Christians. Not every person who espoused some of the arguments 20 years ago or 10 years ago is destined to end up like the two bottom people on that graphic. Let us buy infants and surrogates. The demons are telling me to kill Christians. But you were warned. You were without excuse. You derided, made fun of people like Steve and others who told you where this was going to end up. Now, I think Steve would be probably the first to tell you we were a little bit surprised. It only took 10 years to get to the demons are telling us to kill children.
Yes, I did not think we were going to hear that fast. Correct.
But the undefinition of gender, mark the tape. You can go back and listen to those episodes. So, yes, I think we can have some charity to people who engage in a homosexual lifestyle, who said, I didn't even see this. This has gone way too far. Yeah, there's going to be some charity for this, but sorry. You were on that spectrum. You had a part to play in the undefinition of everything. So you may not end up at the bottom of that graphic, but you're on that graphic nonetheless.
Mm-hmm. All right, Todd.
Yeah, back when I was at the Des Moines Register, a really good guy, a senior statesman there, who was one of the few other actual conservatives there. And Steve, I'm John Carlson.
Sure. Yeah. I worked with him when I was there.
He was very, very good to me. But when he was less prone to thinking that the sky was falling with step one there.
Yeah.
It's not, he didn't think it was a good thing, but I said something to him that day in the newsroom, and then we went on, both of us left the Register. He retired and I moved on to Steve, and we saw each other years after that. And he came up to me and he said, "You know what? I will never forget what you told me that day." And he quoted my words back to me, and with the Obergefell ruling. And I said, well, the world was just turned upside down that day. And he said, I knew what you meant, but I really didn't know what you meant. And then he said this: we were well on the way to step two. This is when we were, if you didn't bake the cake, we were rounding you up.
Mm-hmm.
The volume it went from 0 to 60 on this, fast. And so, yeah, they're already doing this. How many stories have we had about 2 gay men who adopt babies, little boys, and they literally violate their tiny bodies for sexual gratification? Here's the thing, though. We are already at the bottom. This is full-on Caligula already. But we have so much Netflix and chill in our life, even amongst the so-called church, that we're just bemused with comfort. The millstone side hustle should be a booming industry amongst far more people than me. It is so dark what we have let happen, and I fear the judgment that we will all reap for it will be, well, it'll certainly be what we deserve. But my God, and right for the start, Steve, you texted, I had already seen it. I mean, my secret hope with the Pope, who had, been messaging early 4 months in, saying and doing really good things. But once that Father Martin gave it, that a trap was being set for him.
Remind people who James Martin is.
James Martin.
Total coincidence. That's the name of the atheist in our movie, by the way.
He's a totally out
kinda
gay heretic who's still a priest and needs to be excommunicated, but he hasn't been for blah, blah, blah. So he meets with the Pope. Very public picture. And then also says, I'm glad to see he's going to be just like Francis. And I was hoping that a trap was being set, because this pilgrimage that was not just a gay pilgrimage, but the gays were telling you they were hopping on board and they were going to do it, and they marched on in to St. Peter's. And I was hoping this was an opportunity. As we talked about back with the demon statue, let's do a public exorcism. Mm-hmm. Same thing. I was really hoping, like, there's not just for optics. Optics are good, but hey, there's real power. Just be gone, Satan. I wanted to see it. And instead we get, no, apparently we're hiring some gay leader of Vatican art or something like that. I mean, so we got Mike Pence as our Pope. The demons are marching. And I don't even think it's a coincidence that the last 2 weeks of what happened with this Pope is why now suddenly chaos everywhere. Government, from, Charlotte and that poor girl getting stabbed to governments falling in France and Nepal and everywhere. The demons are marching. They're taking ground. Even when we think we're the ones taking ground, they're such Pyrrhic victories that the demons are still clapping, because they know if they just bide their time long enough, the seeds are not falling on good soil. The thorns will choke them out. The soil isn't deep enough, so they will grow parched. Where would you yet be struck? They're down once again in 10-gallon hat, Texas, at Texas A&M. This video is going viral. There seemed to be some consequence on the front, but how did this happen at Texas A? Not even at UT. Texas A&M is supposed to be one of the
conservative school,
conservative Christian
ROTC,
public
the
schools.
Bush family, yeah.
Yes, and the teachers are just flat out, we're kicking students out if they disagree with this. Our job is to raise students to be the next school superintendents who promote LGBT. They're telling you that in Texas. How many more ways do they have to unzip and just pee on your kid's face before you say, I think maybe one football game is going to be enough, and the rest of the time I'm going to go cracking some skulls because you're not doing that to my kid? When is enough?
All right, Aaron, put the graphic back up there for a second, if you don't mind. So the graphic ends with "You are here." All right, the stormtroopers of the Spirit of the Age, the armed tranny shooter. Okay. What's the next step? Then, if you guys both agree that this meme is not fake news, what's the next step? And then I have a follow-up question to that as well. But let's start there. What do you guys think the next step is? Where's this go from here?
If you don't worship the demons telling me to kill Christians, you're a bigot.
So essentially the same pattern we have seen across the board with everything involving any form of identity pandering whatsoever. But you're just saying this is the Costco supersized version of it is what you're going to say, is what we're going to get now.
Yeah.
You want to get nuts? Let's get nuts. Let's go straight to the Bible. We just got done talking today about it's not just the libs, the Kamala voters, the females that don't want to have their kids anymore. Apparently the conservative women don't want to have either. So kids are whatever. Kids are just going to be currency. Why wouldn't if the demons are taking over the culture like they have in the past? What did a bunch of pagan societies do? Heck, not just pagan societies. What did the nation of Israel do to its own children when it fell, Steve, in the darkest? You've reminded us they threw their own babies into the fire. It's happened before. There's nothing new under the sun. We're going to have kids just to throw them into the fire to appease the demons, because the demons are going to run the culture. And it's going to be currency. As you've said before, the religion becomes the currency. And I got to have the crops come on time, or I got to get Netflix paid for. So I guess we have kids.
Well, we've started the proto version of that, of the demons then creating laws and systems that allow us to do this for ourselves, right? I mean, the current public health position of many institutions and really the entire public health nexus, the current position is that if your son is dangling his pinky finger, if your newborn infant son's pinky finger is dangling from mom's uterus, but the rest of his body is literally outside of hers, you can literally just reach in there and crush his skull if you want, and it's not a crime. However, should mom give full birth to her son and then say, no, I don't think he needs a hepatitis vaccine, we're good here, you're not permitted to do that. You're not permitted to take injections there's liability shields for that you can't hold liable for people if something goes wrong. You can't say no to your child taking those, but you can say yes to murdering your child, provided like literally the cuticle of the pinky is dangling from your uterus. That's not an exaggeration.
Which is why
that's
I meant
not an
Caligula.
embellishment. That's literally California, Oregon, and Washington are getting together as some kind of consortium of states. That's literally the position that they're advocating. That's not an embellishment. That's not absurdity to illustrate absurd. That is a literal position. As long as one appendage is still somewhat attached loosely to the uterus, you can just reach right in there and kill it right at the point of full delivery, provided it hasn't completely vacated the birth canal if you change your mind. But if after the baby's born, your mind says, you're not going to put an injection into my kid that there's no liability for if something goes wrong, you don't have a right to do that. That is not an exaggeration. Everything I just told you is literally true. So because of that, tell me how what Todd just suggested really seems all that nuts on the line that we're on currently. So that leads me to my follow-up question. And Uncle Billy's going to get quoted again here today. This is a sticky wicket, George. Okay? Much of the right is homo. Much of it is. The way more than you think. When you hear Democrat pundits and liberal comedians go on and joke that the Grindr app usage goes way up at GOP events, that's not a troll. Well, it is a troll, but it's not what you think it is. That's not their normal projection. Much of the right is homo. Much of the right is very gay. And who's the guy from, one of the OG conservative websites?
Drudge?
Drudge's a gay sensationalist. That part's true. But
you're talking about the Gateway pundit?
No, not Gateway. Gateway's Jim Hoft is a homo. That's true. Yeah, he outed himself several years ago. That's true. So what's funny? There are so many options here.
This one, no. That one, no.
Who's the guy? Exactly. Who's the guy at Western Conservative Forum that got kicked off of the Kennedy Center? Because that's like one of your OG original conservative sites with like WorldNet Daily back in the day. Okay, who's the guy I'm thinking of at Western Conservative Forum?
We're not talking about Theo, right?
No, forgive me.
Yeah,
and years ago I knew this guy too, and I cannot remember his name. Forgive me. But
the guy who got kicked off, or the guy who
the guy who kicked him off. Okay. Is now I forgot his name too, but he's a big homo. He's a big homo enforcer.
You prove your point. There's so many.
I know. I can't keep his name straight either. It's Richard. Is it Richard something I'm thinking
Richard.
of?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
All right.
But the guy he kicked off from Western Conservative Forum, he kicked him off for saying homosexuality is sinful. He got kicked off the board at the Kennedy Center for that. I go back to
Rick Grinnell.
Rick Grinnell, thank you. I go back to that's who did the big homo guy. One of the biggest donors on the right is Peter Thiel. Homo. Now, he also tends to donate to the most based candidates on our side at the same exact time, so we have to reconcile that, right? We have to reconcile that. We have to love our neighbor as we love ourselves. There is a higher standard for us than there is the world, because we are not our own. We were bought at a high price. So we do have to recognize that Thiel tends to give to a lot of the most based causes out there, but he's a homosexual. So the Natalie Winters article, right? She's the chief reporter over there at War Room with Bannon. Wasn't this just 2 weeks ago? And she's talked about a bunch of her girlfriends who couldn't wait to come to D.C. with Trump winning the election. Let's get jobs and find our husbands. What better hunting ground for a husband than right here on the front lines of America's culture war in the Trump administration? They got here, right? All these little hot Gen Z chicks showed up, and what they found? Everybody's a homo. Everybody's gay. So they're back on Bumblebee and the rest of the apps like they would have been when they were at home looking for a dude. All right. So given how entrenched this is on our side, what realistically now, Aaron, if you throw the graphic back up there again, given that background, what is a realistic barometer for how far back we can push this ball? We can Sisyphus, is that right? Push this back up the mountain. Sisyphus, thank you. How far can Sisyphus go here to push this back up the slope? How far can we go realistically?
In what time frame?
The next decade. So you raising your kids, let's say, Aaron. My kids getting married and having kids.
I think high end, just use our pronouns. More likely the drag before the drag queen. Just let us dance and drag for your children.
I think we can get it all the way up to the pronoun. I do think so. I mean, the same Donald Trump, who has surrounded himself with more gays than any other Republican figure that we can ever think of, is still adamant as of yesterday. He was out. There's only two genders. Okay. So I do think we can get it that far. I do. What do you think, Todd?
There's only one right answer to this. There's one thing when it's kind of theoretical, head knowledge, slippery slope. We've actually immersed in it. If the only answer is if we do not get it all the way back to the top and to the beginning, there's nothing to salvage. We will lose in the end.
Yeah, you're right.
That's a biblical tale. If you will not look at the carnage, God tells us, look, I told you, I tried to warn you. Here it is. Now you must suffer for it. Unless you give your hearts completely to me. We will not have given our hearts completely back to him if we do not get it all the way back. That's just the truth of the matter. So I don't think there's any point. How we're going to do it, for all the reasons you talked about, you are exactly right. So now it's beyond our capacity. It's every knee shall bend territory. I hear you. But hey, let's start with the churches then. It has to start there. It has to start with the churches and the men. We can't have any excuses anymore. We can't have any distractions. Aaron, you said it so, but the failure of the dads on every front starts here too. There's those great classical, they're like 50s memes and where a kid comes up smiling face and the mom or the dad is smiling. Hey, mom, dad, I think I'm transgendered. And they just reply back to him, well, you're not. Mm-hmm. Look at we have all these, let's have a deep, no.
In the Old Testament, there are two kinds of kings that are called good. There is the king who restores rightful worship of the God of the Bible and return of ritual to the temple. And that's who almost all of the good kings are. It is a very short list of kings who take the next step and go to the high place where the pet sin of the people was located. The forerunner to what we have in European pagan circles is called the Maypole. And before there was the Maypole, there was the Asheroth or Asherah pole. Same thing, just Bedouin, Middle Eastern, as opposed to Druidic, pagan, European. Same demons, same thing, just different people, different eras. And people went up to the high place and participated in the sex rituals with the prostitutes, both male and female, to the matriarchal goddess Asherah for fertility. But also, let's just be honest, because it was a real good time. And so for every Josiah who went to the high place and tore those down, the vast majority of the quote-unquote good kings left that alone, kind of like this is the fourth rail of Israelite politics. I'm not touching it, not to mention I might like to partake of it every now and then as well, okay? And that's kind of how I analyze this situation.
You're right.
I do think we have Hezekiahs that will Sisyphus this thing up the mountain, including the current guy in the White House, by the way. I do think they'll Sisyphus this thing up into the mountain to push it back to we're not reading anybody's pronouns. What I do not see on the horizon in any elected leader anywhere in America, as currently comprised of our roster, and I'm going to include the governor of Florida in this too, by the way, as much as I love him. I don't see anybody that takes us, that Josiah is this issue. I think there's other issues that Ron DeSantis is a Josiah on. I don't believe this is one of them. I think this is a well-established high place now.
You're right.
It's gone too mainstream now, and we have to accommodate it to some degree now. We can't get around it now.
Well, that last part can never be true. It can never be true. Not by anybody who calls themselves a Christian. We can't have just demon statues like here in Iowa and multiple prominent Christians saying, well, that's just separation of church and state. That's how it goes. See, the lies are real deep. We have to start with the church and the men. And if those lies will not be removed there, they won't be removed anywhere.
Pop Culture Tuesday's next. Back here on the Steve Deace Show, powered by our friends over at realestateagentsitrust.com. In these unprecedented times,
Bing.
Like how unprecedented? How about my own street? 1 year apart, same street, houses built the same year, right next door to each other. One goes on sale for $50,000 less than the other one originally did. That's pretty unprecedented. That just goes to show you, man, how, shall we call it, mercurial the real estate market has become in the post-scamdemic. We're not in a recession world. All right. So you need to make sure more than ever you've got an agent you can trust, the kind of agent that you are going to be recommending to the people you care about later on. To get you started finding that agent, the name says it all, realestateagentsitrust.com. Go to that website, get started today. We'll hook you up with an agent, likely from this audience, not always, but most of the time. So you know you've got values in common as well. And their track record of success, we have verified it for you, or we wouldn't recommend them to you. So whether you're trying to get across town or across the country, where you ultimately want to go is across the finish line in what even under the best of circumstances can be a stressful process. So make sure you've got the right agent at realestateagentsitrust.com. That's realestateagentsitrust.com. All right, let's close it out here today on a Pop Culture Tuesday, where we look at what's trending in pop culture and how, if at all, that either conflicts or aligns with the things that we're trying to conserve based on the fact that they have revealed throughout history they are both true, good, and beautiful. You know what? I don't know that I've asked you guys this. Have either of you ever seen any of the Conjuring movies?
Never.
No.
How many are there?
Well, it's a whole spin-off franchise. There are 4 movies though of the OG franchise about the Warrens. Okay, and then they have spawned a group of spin-offs that have all been very successful too. I mean, this has become a highly successful franchise of horror films. It is arguably, it's not a powerful brand like to the point of a Dracula or a Frankenstein, but a lot of that is free use nowadays too. In terms of an IP or proprietary, it's possible it's the most successful horror franchise in the history of American cinema. It would be up there.
Is that good or terrible?
Well, I would use the word interesting. Because for me, I don't go hunting for this genre like I did when I was a kid. I'm interested in this genre now when it delves into spiritual themes. Like I think I saw the first Final Destination film, and I haven't seen any since. It's just, that's just, death porn. I'm not in any of like the Saw stuff. That's just torture porn. I'm interested when we get into like Paranormal Activity, when the culture gets into spiritual themes. I'm interested in what the culture thinks. As I've said for years, I do think you can tell a lot about a culture by what it claims to be frightened by or not. What's been fascinating to me about this series from the beginning is it is imbued with Catholic Christianity. I mean, it marinates in this. Nuns are heroes of like the movies, for example, one of the spin-off series. There is more religious motif, I would say, in the Conjuring films than maybe any franchise of films that Hollywood's maybe ever produced. It's and even throughout the, after you get past the first Exorcist, there was a couple of others, and there's still Catholic priests and stuff in there. But what The Conjuring has held firm all the way through is that Christianity is the antidote, is the victor over evil. Now, if we played Theo Nerd with before we even got to Catholic and Protestant debates, if I just turned these movies loose on you, for example, Todd, as a Catholic, okay, and said, all right, adjudicate the orthodoxy of this to me, I promise you're going to find some issues, okay? And I'm going to trust you know more about Catholicism as a Catholic than I do. So, I mean, I can even point out issues just in my own, generalized understanding of your sect. For example, it places a high emphasis on the Warrens' psychic abilities and kind of almost forms of divination or spiritual foresight, which of course traditionally Christianity has said that it's not that Christianity has said these things are not real, but to not engage in them, to not play with them, to not go near them. They come almost always from a dark place, right? So there's some serious syncretism going on. There is, which I think if you are a mature believer, you would struggle with. But most people seeing The Conjuring are not. And most people seeing The Conjuring, remember, the greatest single driver of confirmations in the 20th century or post-World War II for the Catholic Church was The Exorcist. What most people hear is Christ as a victor. If you're an average person, you don't know these theological nuances, you grew up godless, you hear Christ is victor, the church is triumphant. The church is the hero against evil. Christianity specifically. So there's some syncretism with spiritism, but not syncretism with like any other religious system, right? They don't have the priest and the rabbi walk in together, okay? The priest and the sheikh come in together, all right? I mean, they are seen as instruments of the church. They are the church clearly is is where people caught in the throes of these paranormal demonic oppressions should turn to. We're not, and so it's very interesting to me in that it's kind of a syncretism of late 19th century, early 20th century spiritism. People like Houdini and stuff were into. So seances and things of that nature, and it's syncretized with Catholicism and Christianity.
Do you know anything about the people behind the making of these movies from the onset until now? And does it explain? So their
one daughter has been a creative consultant on all of the films. She is still very involved. She maintains the family legacy and stuff like that. And the guy who directed the original director of the films is the guy who has done several hit movies like Aquaman, John, I can't remember his name. All right. But he has been very prevalent in the horror and the fanboy superhero genre. Okay. And the word of God is proclaimed over these things. So I'm fascinated, and there's very little to no profanity in these films ever. There's never any nudity or anything lurid whatsoever. It's very nuclear family. I think every family they've helped has been a nuclear family to some degree. Their nuclear family life is very elevated. At the same time, there is clear religious syncretism that is discussed, that if you have even a modicum of theological maturity, you're going to really struggle with. But also at the same time, they make it very clear in the story that Christ is victor over the darkness. So I didn't really have an angle in wanting to discuss this, other than I'm just kind of curious at what you guys think, just based on what I told you.
My first take is you wrestled with this in getting your movie into the theaters and how to market it, but you seriously wanted this movie to be, a tool for saving souls above all else, just like everything else. Now, that's why I asked about the format. I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt that maybe there's some movie Disney lights and magic in order to make things kind of go bump in the night or something like that. And there is, but that there's people here who think, I want to do my best. I think this is real, and I think souls are at stake. And I don't know if that's true. You're not defending them really one way or the other, but allow me that there's enough there that they did their job well enough that this movie could help in that. Wow. I came out of that movie, just kind of wanted to go to a movie. I think evil is real now, and I think the church might be a place, the church broadly speaking, I won't even say it's explicitly Catholic, place to confront it. So I wanted to set the table that way to say, so my opinion then of these movies, why is it a good thing or a terrible thing? It's very much like the superhero movies. What's the point then? If people are going to these things and actually moved by them, just like they clearly were by the Avengers movies, the heroism, the good versus evil, the need to take a stand, and if you're going into these movies and then just kind of saying, yeah, maybe we should trans the kids or not do anything about it. Same with superheroes. Yeah, COVID's here. Well, I guess we just can't do anything about that. That's what my frustration with this is. Steve, in other
words, people went and saw The Exorcist and were like, I need to get to church.
Yes.
People go see a movie with a lot of the same themes and not nearly as graphic and way more wholesome, frankly, in its presentation.
Yes.
And still walk out of there like, oh, man, that was a cool popcorn thing. Got to put my arm around my girl. And hey, where are we going to eat afterwards? That's kind of what you're saying?
The point.
Yeah. Aaron, what do you think? Just based only on what I've told you just now.
Yeah, I'm kind of where Todd is now with movies in general, including this one. I mean, it's just our faith teaches, and we act in a very different way, that, letting the lion out of its cage will result in action. We read the narrative that the gospel presents, and it is expected that that results in action on our end.
Mm-hmm.
So what is the point? What is the point of any movie? You know, we've been saying for years, and, you know, Hollywood is captured, but they still, we talked about this during the Avengers quite a bit, when they were at their zenith. They're still telling our stories in a very wholesome way, in a very inspiring way, or so we thought. Sacrifice, self-sacrifice, and things of that nature. Bravery, courageousness.
Mm-hmm.
They're inculcating all of those themes into their movies.
And those are all themes in these Conjuring films.
Yes.
Yeah.
But if the reaction to that is just mere titillation, hey, that was fun.
Yeah.
Then what are we doing here? What's the point of any of this? And that's when Hollywood isn't just putting out smut, okay? Which is, you know, few and far between. When they're not putting out smut, when they are telling our stories very well, capturing the themes that we find in scriptures very well, even though it's told by fallen man who probably has ulterior motivations. And the reaction from the audience is, that's inspiring. These tales are inspiring. I want to go live up to that. What is the point of any of this? So I'm kind of where Todd lands on this and pretty much every movie.
This last one, by the way, one of the largest openings for a horror film globally in history, $190 million worldwide. That is close to what Fantastic Four opened with worldwide. What's also interesting about this latest one, it's the least horror-y of all the movies. There are some horror elements in the film, but actually much of the film delves with the conclusion of, you know, their legacy as a family, other family dynamics and issues. And it's really only until the third act that we get into a lot of the horror aspects of the film. So it's definitely a different tone than the other ones. I thought in terms of a film, I thought it was pretty good, though. I did. It's just, the first time I thought we were screwed as a culture, I contemplated we're in deep, deep doo-doo here, was in a horror film. And it was when I was writing reviews for movie reviews for WorldNet Daily. And it was the first Paranormal Activity, and went and saw it on opening night. And a movie about a couple that is haunted by a demonic entity. And in the process of the movie, they seek out help from everywhere in the culture. They go online.
I remember this.
They go to the demonologist at the university. They go to her dad. They go everywhere for help on this, except for one institution. Where do they never go?
The church.
They never go to the church, not once. And the church is not even like ridiculed. It's not like at any point somebody's like, should we call a priest? What do they know? No, it's like this is a universe in which the church does not exist. And the only entities of cosmic, unseen variety are dark. There is no light counter to this. And not surprisingly, at the end, evil wins. And I walked out of there, that was 2008, 9, I think is when that movie came out. And I walked out of there and I said to my wife, we are in deep doo-doo. If we're now going to touch into spiritual themes in horror movies again, but we are no longer capable as a culture of thinking there's a redemptive element to that. There are excesses in the Conjuring films theologically I am not comfortable with some of the syncretistic efforts that I've already cited specifically. But at the very least, it brings back the idea that there are redemptive elements within. There's light in the spiritual dimension. At the very least, it does that. And I kind of think that if we can't be motivated by this stuff to be better people than we currently are on some level, I'm not sure what it takes then at that point. You know, I kind of think maybe we are in too many sectors of our culture just viewing everything as if it is in engagement, entertainment,
Yeah,
an escape.
We're kind of a version of Alfred. Some men just want to watch the world burn.
Yeah, in a way. Yeah. But in a way more,
masturbatory way.
Yeah,
Yes,
in a way. Like everything, you guys were telling me the train stabbing, the full video is out, and the woman sadly was actually alive for several minutes after the stabbing, and she's bleeding out, and people are just standing around looking, and
don't even look at her.
Don't look at her. No one calls the cops.
Yep.
Everything is. We're just all voyeurs.
It's the cuckolding.
Yeah.
We are pleasure.
Porn is better than an actual woman.
Yes.
Virtual reality is better than actual reality. We're just all voyeurs now.
I love superheroes, but
couldn't try to actually become a hero in my own life.
No.
Yeah. Romans 8:28.